Hi, welcome to the Innovation Game, a podcast by the IP specialist law firm Potter Clarkson. My name's Rich Wells. I'm a senior associate patent attorney, and I'm joined today by Emmy Hunt, who is a partner in the trademarks department. We're going to talk about what intellectual property considerations you should have when you plan to launch a brand. So, Emmy, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, Rich. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's the first day of December, so I was enjoying my morning advent calendar chocolate today. But yeah, so can't grumble.
Same.
So yeah, IP considerations for when a brand launches. So say I want to come up with some sort of brand. At this early stage, what would you say the most important IP sort of considerations I should be thinking about are?
So, from a trademarks perspective, one of those important considerations has got to be your ability to register the trademark at a registry, at the relevant registry. And the reason that your ability to register the trademark is important is because that's what's going to allow you to enforce the rights at the end against third parties, and also to exploit those rights if you want to, for example, license them or sell them or anything like that. So that ability to register is key. But the other consideration that you've really got to have is also your freedom to use the mark, and that really comes about in relation to other parties' rights. So, what other third parties might be out there who already have registered rights or unregistered rights, and that they might want to enforce against you. So, if your new brand is going to tread on the toes of an existing brand, then you want to know about it now. You don't want to know about it once you've launched your brands and you have to backtrack or withdraw the brand or anything embarrassing like that. You want to find out at the earliest possible opportunity. So that freedom to use question is also key, and it's also the one that's often overlooked.
Yeah, I could imagine when people have their brand, I guess it would be, a logo, a name, a tagline. I suppose, yeah, there is a clamour to get their own rights, but yeah, it is often forgotten from a patent perspective as well, what other people might be doing. So focusing on, those third party rights, your freedom to essentially use your brand. How do you go about checking for whether there's any third party rights out there, and in the timeline of developing and launching a brand, when should you do that, do you think?
Yeah, so what we would usually advise to clients is to carry out some clearance searches. Um, and I'll explain in a second what a clearance search would involve. But in terms of the timing, you really want to do this as early as possible. So before you launch, before you invest too much time and attention to your new brand, and before before you become so wedded to it that it becomes difficult for you to change or walk away from. So do these things, as early as possible. And what the clearance search really involves is looking at the possible sources of other third-party rights. So the main one that you're looking at is the trademark registers. So in the UK, you'll be looking at the UK trademarks registers to see what trademarks have already been registered or have been applied for before you, because those rights might be enforced against you in trademark infringement proceedings. And the other thing that you might want to look at is databases which could show where unregistered rights exist. So, for example, things like company name databases, domain name databases, all of those kinds of things can show where people might have used a conflicting mark to your planned brand in a way that could generate goodwill. And that goodwill might be enforced against you in the UK under the law of passing off. So it's really just about sort of trying to look at what registered and unregistered rights might exist in the new brand, that might conflict with your new brand. And the other thing that it's also worth thinking about is, the new brand is presumably going to be a name, but it might also be other elements. So things like logos or other aspects like slogans and maybe even something like a sound or something like that. And those are all things where there might be existing trademark rights or goodwill that could be relied upon by a third party to prevent you from doing the thing that you are trying to do or that you're planning to do. So those are all things that can all be looked at in the context of a clearance search.
Okay, yeah, so it is a mix of these both registered and unregistered rights, which could could pose potential banana skins for your brand launch. So yeah, you sort of mentioned about doing it before you're wedded to your brand idea. So would you initially take sort of a selection of potential ideas, and how would you work that?
Yeah, that's a really good way of doing it. I think particularly when you're looking at new brands that are brand names, then typically the process is to look for several alternatives. And quite commonly a business will look at developing maybe sort of 4 or 5 different brands, and then deciding which ones which ones the CEO likes best, or whatever, or which ones go through the marketing focus groups and things most successfully, and all of those kinds of things are sort of all considered from the business's point of view. But it is also important to consider the legal risks at that stage as well. So one of the things that you can do is kind of do some screening searches. So if you have a short list of brands, so let's say you've got 5 possible brands that you're looking at, to also carry out some screening searches against those 5 brands to see which ones might have really obvious conflicts that mean that actually it's not even worth putting it in front of your CEO to see if he likes it or not, because there's no way that you can really make that work. And I think once you've got that short list and you can sort of screen it and see which ones are worth pursuing, then you can start looking at maybe having a more detailed look at those brands that are worth investing the time and energy in developing. So I suppose in terms of best practice, what I would generally recommend doing is taking a short list of brands, screening them, getting it down to maybe 2 or 3, and then carrying out a full clearance search. So the full clearance search is the one that would look at sort of online sources and other resources that might identify unregistered rights, as well as just the registered rights position. And from that full clearance, then you can have a full risk assessment of what the likely problems might be if you go ahead and launch that brand, and how registrable how registrable it should be. So I think that clearance search process is really, it should almost be thought of as being a 2-step process.
Yeah, by the sound of it, it kind of aligns with what you'd imagine the practicalities are with developing a brand. You come up with some ideas first, and then as you go through your process of picking the one you like, it's quite nice, I guess, like you say, at that point to know whether there's an element of legal certainty about whether you'd want to use it. So no, that 2-step approach, yeah, does seem to sort of fit a commercial reality as well.
I think so. I think one of the problems that we often find is that that first step is often missed out. So a brand will be almost ready for launch, and then we're looking at clearing it, and then you find problems, but then it's almost too late to go back to the drawing boards, come up with a few alternative brands. And whereas if you build in the clearance process as part of the brand development process, then you often avoid some of those hurdles, and it can take, overall it should take less time and money to do it that way, but it involves a certain amount of organisation and planning, which is a bit of a luxury sometimes. So I appreciate you don't always have that.
No, but I could imagine that the prospect of not having to start again, which no one wants to do, you'd hope would be a good motivator. So who should be thinking about this type of exercise? I guess if you're a prospective brand owner, you can see that they would have an interest in this. But what other entities, stakeholders in a project like this would find this kind of process of these IP considerations important to the branding process?
Yeah, so really it is any creator of brands. So within big organizations, that there's usually an in-house marketing team, and brands can be developed in-house, and it's worth that brand clearances should be conducted by them at the stage of creation as well. But also marketing and brand agencies who are employed by companies to create these brands for them should also be thinking about what legal issues might arise from the brands that they're creating on behalf of their clients, because there's nothing worse, is there, than asking someone to create a brand and then being told by someone else that you can't use it. So it's kind of,
Be a bad day at the office, wouldn't it?
Well, it's a bad day at the office for everyone, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's bad for the clients of the brand agencies, but also bad for the brand agencies to to be in that position where the legal obstacles are kind of an annoyance that crop up at the end rather than it being a sort of consideration that within the process. So yeah, so really I think sort of everyone benefits from early brand clearances.
No, that makes sense. No, thanks for that. I mean, that was a really good overview and practical explanation of what you should be thinking about from an IP perspective with a brand launch. So if you wanted someone listening to this to take away three important messages, what would they be?
Well, I suppose the first message has got to be search early. If you're going to carry out any searches, you should do it early enough that it's still secret. You kept the brand under wraps. You really don't want to be going around publicising a brand and then clearance searching
Okay.
it. So if you can maintain some confidentiality around the new brands before you start clearance searching, and definitely before you start registering brands and things, and that's kind of like the first key consideration. And then I think after that is obviously this question of how to carry out your clearance searches. And I think if you've got, like I say, if you've got the time to do it and you can be sufficiently organized, then trying to do that in sequence or in sort of prioritized system is sort of the best way. So creating a short list of brands that you're looking at, carrying out some initial screening searches and try and get an idea of what problems might exist. And then from that shortlist, work through to narrow them down and then carry out much more detailed searches on those marks that carry less risk, less apparent risk, so that then you can make a sort of an informed decision on which brand to go with based on the clearance searches as well. And then I think the third tip is, once you've got your clearance searches done, then you should really be trying to protect them as soon as possible. So once you've got the confidence from the searches that you're going to be okay to press ahead, then start filing trademark applications and get those marks registered in territories that you're going to be interested in. And also, I suppose, watch and make sure that other people are not registering similar brands to you as well. Use those rights that you're getting to prevent other people as well.
Thanks for that. I think that's really interesting and quite illustrative of how important it is to consider these issues, because I think most people that develop a brand would immediately jump to wanting to work out what their brand is and then protect it, say with trademarks. But in some ways, that's one of the later things you need to do in this whole process of considering IP as part of a sort of an integral part of your branding procedure, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
No, thanks for that, Emmy. And obviously, here at Potter Clarkson, we've got a big team of very experienced trademark professionals that can help with any element of clearance searches or registering trademarks. And to support our offering, we are launching a clearance search product called SafeLaunch. Is there anything you want to sort of add to the name of that, which is what I brought to the table?
Yeah, so SafeLaunch is really designed to help clients follow that process exactly. So SafeLaunch provides a fixed price search package, which will allow our clients to carry out identical screening searches in the first instance, so that they can narrow down those potential brands to maybe one or two that are going to be of interest to them, and then a fixed price full clearance search that provides them with a full legal risk analysis so they can decide whether they're happy to proceed. And then on the basis of that, of course, then they can go and register lots of trademarks to protect their position and allow them to enforce and exploit those rights in future.
Thanks for that. That sounds great. So yeah, I hope you found that useful. Information about SafeLaunch can be found on our website, www.potterclarkson.com. This has been the Innovation Game. You can find it on your usual podcast repository, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud. My name's Rich Wells, and yeah, I've been joined by Emmy Hunt, and thank you so much for listening. Take care.